Good morning, everybody. Another beautiful day in Hawaii, and it's time to do some weeding. Um, for those of you not familiar with Hawaiian fauna, this is a red tea leaf. Um, the tea is native. Some people argue about whether red or green is more native. I don't find value in that argument, but it's there. This is Croton, the yellow, the arrowhead vine here. Grab that. So the arrowhead vine is a ground cover, and I guess the main spiritual point of ground cover that I think is like really important to articulate is that there's a there's this idea that is a misunderstanding, I think, from the meditation practices and maybe from Buddhism or offshoots of Buddhism that say, to clear the mind. And what they don't tell you is that, as famously mentioned, that nature abhors a vacuum. So if you make a space clear, the work that it takes to maintain that clear is enormous. And you can think about it like a yard, you know, like where we have all this mulch, which is just more of a placeholder right now, as I'll get to in a second. There's constantly weeds coming up, and so you know that's just the nature of things, and that's how everything works. That's what it means to be the nature of things. So you know what what makes a lot more sense, and this is an argument for things like mindfulness and mantra, is that you create a space, clear it, and then you have this practice of putting things that you do like in this space. So, for example, these trees and the arrowhead vine that will, plants that I want, that have value to me, that are going to take over this area, and their mere presence will suppress the things that I don't want. And so, in the picture of that, it's like, generally speaking, you could say overindulgence in negative thoughts or a positive attitude. So the positive attitude then consumes the resource space, so that the negative thoughts have a lot more difficulty to get through. And that's really what I think you want to try to maintain as a practice, and maybe arriving at difficult thoughts, or arriving at these like positive thoughts uh, all the time doesn't come super easy, and that's totally natural, because as you can see from the garden, um, it starts somewhere, right? It's not like you just put in a 50-year-old tree. That's, as convenient as that might sound, that's just not the way things work. So you put in small trees, and it takes some work to build up the maintenance. But as time goes on, you know, the work that you put in establishes more and more and more. And then you kind of just like relax into this lower level of maintenance that I'm doing now, because I've already put a bunch of work into this. So these beneficial plants, thoughts that I've established in the garden of my mind have already started to kind of snowball, to roll on their own. Now, um, I guess I could also say, just to mention for completeness, that it's possible that even your positive thoughts can become an issue, because you don't want to spend too much time overthinking, no matter what it is, because that can still be a lot of work. You don't want to overthink, And in that case, you know, we don't want the vines or the trees to just overwhelm the garden either. You know, we want to keep everything neat and in its place. So, as a brief introduction to my garden, this is a Suriname cherry. It's black Suriname cherry. It's really nice. And then, if you can kind of tell from that angle, mixed between the Suriname cherry with the small leaf is this big, larger, waxy leaf. This is called Grumi Chama. Suriname and Grumi Chama are basically like genetic cousins. And so they both put out a small, like little fruit. The problem with, so I love berries and all kinds of things like that. Um, and Hawaii does have a lot of like really amazing fruit, but growing up in the Northwest, I love cherries, and the issue that we have in Hawaii is that cherries, as well as a lot of types of berries, like blueberries, for example, they need cold days, and it's part of their life cycle. I think with germination, so they just won't grow here. But these are cherry adjacent, and they're very delicious, and they grow really well. Yeah, so I've already done a bunch of work in this area, but one thing that I think is really important is, you know, if this whole area were covered with weeds, and there's other places in the garden that is like that, um, you know, what we get is a sense of potentially overwhelm. Like, what what do I do? You know, there's just so much here. Um, you know, where to start, and my strategy with the plants, as well as, you know, with the, you know, internal dialogue and all that, is, well, you got to start with your most valuable parts. So, you know, it's not computer just kind of raster scanning over all the whole area, because you might not have the time or the patience or the resources to do it that way. So what you do is you go to the base of your most valuable resources, and then you work outwards from there, because that's really what you want to try to establish is, like I was saying before, that the 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 growth of what you want is prioritized. So you do your maintenance with the growth of your desire in mind, so that it starts to be an asset to you. You know, if I were to just start um, clearing everything in an open space, and then it just has no competition and grows back, that's going to be, in the long term, a lot more work than if I prioritize the growth of, you know, my trees and my ground covers, um, because then uh, you know, then they start becoming more of an ally than a liability. So, general strategy I like to think about as I'm planting. Um, and, you know, I would also mention, as I'm doing this, I'm 42 years old, and, you know, I used to do yoga. I used to be fairly flexible, and since I started running more, I've lost quite a bit of flexibility, which I'm not even sure if that's a bad thing. I think flexibility might be a little, uh, you know, overvalued in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a basic level of flexibility, but the reason why I'm going on about that is because uh, I think gardening is amazing for that. you're constantly changing levels and bending over to grab things, and that is, I think that what you need to do good gardening is, has embedded in it like a very reasonable amount of adequate flexibility. Like, I don't need to be able to like reach back and touch my head to my feet or whatever, because I don't see that happening in any part of my life outside of trying to prove to somebody how flexible I am. But being able to like bend down and grab whatever I need to grab, that's a very reasonable, type of flexibility that's very practical. This is mint. It's a culinary mint. It's tasty. The issue with it though is it's got these runners, and so it's also not very drought tolerant, and we've had like a very unseasonably rainless rain season. So you kind of see weaknesses in certain things that you thought were good ground covers, and so now I'm in the process of like pulling up the scraps of the mint to so that it doesn't compete with a more beneficial ground cover such as the arrowhead vine, which is really pretty. Let me see if I can grab a good example of it. Of course, I hate to ever just kill something, but I'll take a leaf just so you can see how pretty it is. And what's also really interesting about this is that this variegation is a result of how much sun it gets. So in places where there's very little sun, you might see totally green, and in places where it's in full sun and not enough water, but mostly just the full sun, it can be almost white. I don't have a good example of that here, but in other parts of the property we do have that. So it's really interesting. It's not a consistent leaf pattern. Oh, here we go. How about that? So it's pretty in different conditions for different reasons. Then of course we got some citrus here, durian, Rollinia, and this is another cousin of the cherry grumichama. I don't remember what it's called. It's kind of obscure. It's obscure enough that it only has a Latin name as far as I know, but it's so pretty. So even if it doesn't produce fruit that I want, it's such a pretty tree. So I'm not sure what you can see, but this is another good example of like, there's a bunch of little weeds in here in this walking area, and I'm not going to bother to pull every single one of them out because a lot of times actually we could just walk on them and that'll be enough to stifle them. But in here we have tobacco as well as the El Dorado, and these are both going to kind of fill in here and create a hedge. El Dorado's got really pretty flowers. Let me see if I can. The tobacco just went through a flowering cycle. They actually look kind of similar, like little aggregating, these clusters. This is white and this color, I'm gonna call that fuchsia, purple. I'm not sure, but really pretty. And yeah, so this hedge is going to go all the way down. And here, this is this obviously banana behind me, and then this is a black sapote, which I'm really excited about. Very pretty tree, nice waxy leaves, very healthy, no disease. Haven't fertilized it hardly anything, and it's got tons of fruit on it. And this is my commitment to all of you guys that as the fruit starts coming in, we can do a little bit of, showcasing of that as well. The only things that are in season right now are citrus and the peanut butter fruit. So we'll get to that shortly. But we got tons of other things coming in. I think all said and done, we've probably got maybe 40 different types of fruiting plants on the property, maybe more, I'm not sure. And then we also have like a lot of ornamentals and culinaries. Um, this is a purple star apple, which I had to just do a heavy prune on because it had scale. Um, the maintenance of certain plants is higher for some than others, and that's just the way life goes. But when the fruit is very desirable, you tolerate the extra maintenance. And then, of course, when the fruit is very desirable and low maintenance, it's just like this superstar that you love. This is my wife's favorite fruit. This is a white sapote. It's a very pretty tree. The leaves almost kind of look like mango, this palmate formation. Uh, so palmate indicates that the leaves are all coming from one place, like the palm of your hand, versus pinnate, which is like this. I don't know if you can see that. So pinnate meaning that it's coming out like that versus um, from a center point. And this is a neem. Um, Very pretty. Uh, you know, it's good for bug treatment, and it has lots of medicinal purposes and values. It's a Indian like staple for dental care and wound protection and things like that. I haven't really done anything with it so far, but it's also just a small tree, so we'll get to that eventually.